Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The sharp metallic buzz of my alarm clock cut through the quiet of dawn. It was 6:30 a.m., but in Amarillo, Texas, the world was already stirring. Sunlight seeped through the blinds of my small bedroom, drawing stripes across the scuffed hardwood floor. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and groaned, already aware of the long day ahead. Down the hall, the familiar patter of small feet grew louder until Nicole, my 8-year-old daughter, appeared in the doorway. Her curly blonde hair was an untamed mess, and her watermelon-patterned pajamas added a touch of brightness to the otherwise muted room. "Dad," she called out, planting herself with all the authority her tiny frame could muster. "Don't forget, today is parents' presentation day at school." I sipped from the coffee mug in my hand, savoring the bitter warmth before responding. "Morning to you too, Nick." And yes, I remember. She crossed her arms, unconvinced. "You said you'd come, you promised, and you're gonna talk about fixing pipes, right? Like how you fixed the Hendersons' bathroom last week." A grin crept across my face. "Oh, the legendary clogged toilet repair. Sure, that'll be a hit with the kids." Nicole giggled, her earlier sternness melting away. "It's not just toilets, Dad. You do important stuff. You make sure people have water, and..." She gestured dramatically. "You save them from floods and disasters." I chuckled and knelt to meet her eye level. "I'll be there, princess. I promise. Now, go get ready before the bus leaves without you." Satisfied, she bounded off down the hall. I watched her go, my heart swelling with pride. No matter how chaotic life as a plumber could be, Nicole's unwavering belief in me made it all worthwhile. The day began like any other. My work van, affectionately dubbed the Fisher Fixer, was stocked and ready. As I loaded up my tools, my neighbor, Hank, strolled over, sipping a can of soda at an hour most people were still reaching for coffee. "Busy day ahead?" Hank asked, leaning against the van. "Is there any other kind?" I replied, tossing a wrench into the toolbox. Hank smirked. "Don't forget the school thing. Nicole's been talking about it all week." I nodded. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Hank gave me a mock salute. "Good luck impressing all those suits and ties. You're a braver man than me." As I pulled out of the driveway, I couldn't help but laugh. I had a feeling he wasn't entirely wrong. The sound of rushing water echoed in the cramped, dimly lit laundry room as I tightened the final bolt on a leaking pipe. My watch read 1:38 p.m. I'd promised myself to be done by 1:30, but Mrs. Grayson's emergency had taken longer than expected. "All done," I said, wiping the sweat from my forehead and standing up. The knees of my jumpsuit were soaked and stained with muddy water. Mrs. Grayson appeared in the doorway, holding a towel. "Oh, bless your heart, Matthew. You've saved me a fortune in repairs." "No problem, Mrs. Grayson," I replied, packing up my wrench. "But I've got to run. I'm late for my daughter's school presentation." "Oh dear," she gasped, stepping aside. "Don't let me keep you. Go, go." I sprinted to my van, slamming the toolbox into the back and jumping into the driver's seat. As the engine roared to life, I glanced at the dashboard clock, 1:43 p.m. My stomach tightened. Nicole's presentation started in 17 minutes. The streets of Amarillo blurred past as I sped toward Greenville Elementary. Every red light felt like a personal attack. At one particularly long stoplight, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. My hair was matted to my forehead, and streaks of dirt lined my cheeks. "Great," I muttered, grabbing an old rag from the passenger seat to wipe my face. It helped a little, but the jumpsuit, splattered with mud, and who knows what else, was a lost cause. Finally, I pulled into the school parking lot. Parents in sleek sedans and SUVs were stepping out in crisp suits and polished shoes. I parked next to a shiny BMW and grimaced at the sight of my mud-smeared van. As I rushed through the front doors, the school secretary, Mrs. Langston, waved me down. "Mr. Fisher, Presentation day started 5 minutes ago. You're just in time. Thanks, I puffed, jogging toward the auditorium. The large double doors creaked as I pushed them open, revealing a room full of well-dressed parents seated in neat rows. The polished wooden floor magnified the sound of my boots as I slipped in through the side aisle. "Dad!" Nicole's voice rang out from the front, her hand shooting up in an enthusiastic wave. Heads turned toward me, their gazes falling on my stained jumpsuit and scuffed boots. I felt the heat rise to my face as I gave Nicole a small, sheepish wave. Sliding into an empty chair at the back, I muttered to myself, "Well, at least I made it." The soft hum of polite applause filled the auditorium as the principal called Nicole's name. I watched as my daughter, brimming with confidence, strode to the center of the stage. Her bright blue dress swayed as she turned to face the audience, the microphone barely taller than she was. "This is my dad," she began, her voice ringing clear and steady. "His name is Matthew Fisher, and he's a plumber." The room went still. A few parents exchanged glances, and I braced myself for the awkward moment to follow. But Nicole continued, her face beaming with pride. "My dad doesn't wear a suit or work in an office," she said, her hands gripping the microphone tightly. "But he does something amazing. He fixes pipes so people have clean water and their houses don't flood. He even saved Mrs. Henderson's house last week when her kitchen sink exploded." I sank lower into my chair, a mix of embarrassment and admiration swirling in my chest. "And he's really smart," Nicole added, her voice growing more animated. "He knows how to fix anything. He taught me how to fix my bike too." The kids in the audience whispered among themselves, a few of them pointing in my direction. One boy raised his hand and shouted, "That's so cool. Can he fix our sprinklers?" Nicole giggled. "He can fix anything," she said with conviction. I couldn't help but smile as the room began to warm to her words. Even the parents, who moments ago had been stiff and polished, seemed to relax. For the first time that day, I didn't feel like an outsider. As Nicole finished her introduction, she caught my eye and grinned, mouthing the words, "I told you they'd love you." The principal gestured toward me, and the realization hit like a freight train. I was next. My palms felt clammy, my jumpsuit stained and rumpled under the stage lights. As I stood, the wooden floor creaked, amplifying my every step toward the microphone. "Hi. I'm Matthew Fisher," I began, rubbing the back of my neck nervously. As Nicole said, "I'm a plumber." The room was silent. A few children whispered, their curiosity evident, while some parents exchanged polite but skeptical looks. My heart raced as I fumbled with the microphone, leaving a faint grease mark on its surface. "Did you know," I continued, clearing my throat, "that a small leak in a pipe can waste over 3,000 gallons of water a year? That's enough to fill a backyard swimming pool." The murmurs in the crowd grew quieter, the children now leaning forward slightly. Sensing a shift, I decided to take a gamble. "Nicole mentioned I fix a lot of things, and she's right," I said, my voice gaining confidence. "Last week, I had to repair an entire bathroom in under 3 hours. The water was spraying everywhere, but you know what? It wasn't just about fixing pipes. It was about keeping a family's home safe." A boy in the front row raised his hand eagerly. "How do you stop the water from going everywhere?" "Good question," I replied with a grin. "First, you find the main shutoff valve. It's like hitting the pause button on a flood. Then you figure out where the problem is, like being a detective for pipes." A ripple of laughter passed through the kids. Even some parents nodded, their skepticism softening. Another child piped up, "Can you fix toilets too?" I chuckled. "Toilets, sinks, sprinklers, you name it. If water runs through it, I can fix it." As I explained the basics of plumbing, using simple analogies like comparing pipes to straws and valves to doors, the tension in the room dissipated. The kids were engaged, peppering me with questions about tools and how water systems worked. By the time I finished, the audience's polite silence had transformed into genuine interest. Nicole clapped enthusiastically, and soon the room followed suit, the applause warm and sincere. I caught Nicole's proud gaze. Her smile was brighter than any spotlight, and for the first time that day, I felt like I belonged. As the applause settled, I stepped off the stage, my boots thudding softly against the polished wooden floor. Nicole darted toward me, her arms outstretched. "You were amazing, Dad," she exclaimed, wrapping me in a tight hug. "Thanks, Princess," I said, ruffling her hair gently. "Couldn't have done it without you." A few parents approached as we moved toward the auditorium exit. A well-dressed woman in a crisp navy blazer stopped me with a smile. "Mr. Fisher, right?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Susan, and I just wanted to say, you made plumbing sound fascinating. My sink's been acting up lately. Would you have time to take a look?" "Of course," I replied, shaking her hand firmly. "Swing by the shop, and I'll sort it out for you." A young boy tugged at my sleeve, his face eager. "Can you teach my dad how to fix things? He doesn't know anything about pipes." I laughed, patting his shoulder. "Bring him by too. We'll get him started." As Nicole and I headed out to the van, her excitement was contagious. She bounced on her toes, her words tumbling over each other. "Did you see how everyone clapped? And how those kids were asking you questions? You're the coolest dad ever." I opened the van door for her, then paused, looking down at her earnest face. "You know, Nick," I said, my voice softening, "I might not wear a suit or work in a big office, but hearing you say you're proud of me, that's worth more than anything in the world." She grinned, climbing into the passenger seat. "I wouldn't trade you for anyone, Dad. Not even a fancy lawyer or a doctor." As I slid into the driver's seat, the sun was setting over Amarillo, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. The day's chaos melted away, leaving only the quiet joy of the moment. Nicole rested her hand on mine as I started the engine. "Let's go home," she said. "Mom's gonna love hearing about this." I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. No titles, no spotless clothes, just the unshakable pride of being the dad she believed in. As the van rumbled down the road, I felt like the luckiest man alive.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.